Oh my goodness. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Bryan+Post, and it is snowing here on Planet Post this evening. It is so cold and frigid. I had to wear my Santa hat. Can you guys see that? How cool is that? Hey, Laura, good evening to you. How cool is that to have a little Santa hat and little special effects, and if I move my head, the hat moves with me? That is really quite cute. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. I'm quite fond of my little hat. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Today we are going to talk about, on this episode, we're going to talk about Parenting 101, because sometimes it's all just about the basics. And really what made me think about it is, I mentioned this a while back, this is my first book, For All Things a Season, an essential guide to a peaceful parent-child relationship. I wrote this book in 2002, and I remember when I mentioned it to you all the other day, I was telling you about the cover. This is original cover art by a friend of mine. And let me hang on just a minute. Patty Lack. Her name is Patty Lack. She's from Mountain View, Oklahoma. Hey, Stefan. Good evening, Papa Bear, live from the Netherlands. Nice to see you all. I like that hat there, Stefan. Glad you could join us. So I wanted to read you this poem from Khalil Gibran. And I wrote this book in 2002. It's no longer in print. We've talked about me rewriting it, doing a rewrite and putting it out again for some time. But you can actually still find it on Amazon. And it is a basic. This is my very first book. It's a parenting basic book. And I call it an essential guide because I feel like it is, it's full of the essentials. And it was dedicated to the tree which nurtured my life, my mother and father, and the fruit of my own tree, my daughter Michaela. And so here's the poem. It's Khalil Gibran, the prophet. And a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. Khalil Gibran, the prophet. So, thanks, Stefan. So Khalil Gibran is one of my favorite poets, and he wrote a book of poetry called The Prophet. But this was one of the poems from the book, and I put it in For All Things a Season. And I really don't have a specific topic tonight other than just to get back to the basics of what Gibran said here when he says, your children are not your children. And I think that really from a spiritual place, from a place of us being servants of God and God's children, the children that He brings into our lives, they are not our children. They are brought into our lives for us to lead and to guide and to raise them into maturity so that they can live responsible lives. And I think the thing that oftentimes leads us astray from our very basic parenting requirements is fear and stress. And, I think that when he says, you may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. I feel like that's so profound. It's so powerful. And so really, this image is the image of God. And then there's a man and there's a woman here. And the arrow, they form the bow, and the arrow is the child that's being sent forth into the field. And I think what's so fascinating about that is children, all with all early experiences, with all histories and challenges, they truly do not require more from us than to just love them. But the problem and the challenge and the barrier is that because we are so wired for stress and fear, because our amygdalas are so developed and so sensitive, that stress and fear becomes such a pervasive part of our everyday lives. And so we can be stressed in so many ways that, a day can ask of us, and then we have to be present to these little people whose care we've been charged, and it can be so challenging, and we can so easily revert back to a place of just being overwhelmed, and then we lose connection with them. We lose the ability to be present. As I said before, stress does three things. It causes you to react from the past. It causes you to obsess about the future, but it takes you out of the present. And when we are not in the present, we are not in the moment of truly being able to meet our children where they're at and how they're showing up. And earlier today, I talked about on my Instagram 60-second parenting show, I did the talking about tantrums, how to effectively deal with tantrums. And the requirement of us to realize that when a child is having a tantrum, he's actually in a regressed state. But if the tantrum causes stress for us, then we regress. And when we regress, we're in a state of stress. And now we're no longer present. Now we're reacting from past imprints, or we're obsessing about our fears of the future. And when I say obsessing about the future, I'm saying the concerns that we have oftentimes as parents when we say, what's my child going to be like when he's an adult? What's my child going to be like when he's 18? How's my child going to raise his family? How's my child going to keep a job? How's my child going to do this? It's all this projecting this future fear, projecting this vibration of fear into the future. And I did a Post Daily Dose on this, where Deepak Chopra says, you cannot prevent the future from happening, but you can influence it from the present. And that fear of the future, and that fear and concern about what's going to happen to our children when they get older, is a telltale sign of fear. And that's what fear does. It causes us to react from the past because it stirs up our brainstem, activates our amygdala, stirs up our brainstem. It causes us to obsess about the future, and it takes us out of the present. And the present is the only thing that we have in this moment. And so it can be so challenging for us to just stop and slow down and be present to where our children are in the moment. Like seeing them today, seeing them in this moment. And earlier this evening, I was spending some time with some friends, and a little girl has a little friend of mine. She's 5 years old, and she was doing some sewing. And so for me to just sit there and be present with her and to sew and to not think about anything else, not to worry about anything else, but to look at the stitching and help her thread the needle, and she didn't like the way it was shaped. So we just stopped and we just shaved the little horse's head, into a nice, neat place, but just to be present. And I don't get those opportunities because my children are older now. So I don't get those opportunities as often to just be present with a child. So a lot of times for me, being present is with other adults. Just sitting, maybe it's with my mom, sitting and listening to my mom and just really hearing her and really being present and listening and understanding and listening to, her tone of voice, her body language. being present then and not just distracted. It's so easy for us to be distracted and overwhelmed with our everyday worries and concerns. Hi, Susie. With our everyday worries and concerns and fears. And then we just lose connection with our children. And it's really important. So, when I think about For All Things a Season, I was new in my career. This was 2002 when this book came out. I was very new in my career, but even at that point, I had already studied with some luminaries at that time in the field. And this book was actually a byproduct of several years of study that I had done. And I had written this exact book. I had written this book, and it was originally supposed to have been the 3 steps to parenting. And it was based on a model that I was studying at the time. And some things unfolded with my mentor at the time, and I ended up not publishing the book. I just put it on my shelf. And several years later, after I had a series of breakthroughs just in my understanding about behavior and especially stress, I realized how grateful and thankful I was that I'd never written that book, because the original book that I wrote was full of fear. It was full of stress. It was full of fear, because that was my training. That's what I had learned. And that's what I thought was the way for me at that point in time. And then my thinking evolved. And I believe that we evolve as parents. You probably, most of you wouldn't believe this, but when my oldest daughter's 22 now, when she was 3 years old, I remember being with her at a community pool one day, and I was in the pool with her. She was in the pool. And I just remember being overwhelmed with a level of shame that I just was not a very good father. I just didn't feel like I knew how to connect and really meet her. And I remember in that moment, and I can still kind of remember it, I just remember in that moment saying to myself, dang, you're just not a very good dad. And I know I had been very conscious about being a good father and being present and being available. But in that moment, I just did not feel like a very good dad. And I was a young father, and I was really trying to be more present to my children and trying to really, connect with her in a way. But it was like I was trying to create imprints that I didn't have. And, I remember once I said that, and I've had a few of these. Hi, Kirsten, also from the Netherlands. And hello, Gareth from Michigan. I bet it's cold up there in Roscommon, Michigan. I remember saying to myself, and I've had a couple of these occasions where I'll be really hard on myself as a parent. And then it's like just that acknowledgement, just that honoring of how much I'm struggling just gives me a level of just relief to just relax. And I remember we finished our swimming, hung out, we went back home, and we were just walking in the woods, and I was just letting her walk, and I was just walking behind her, and we were just quiet, and we were listening to the branches crunch and the leaves crunch. And there was just this peace. There was just this peace. And the reality is, in that pool, I wasn't being present. I was wanting to be present, but I was stressed. And I was probably reacting from some past imprints. I was probably obsessing about the future, about not being a very good dad, and therefore, not raising her in the healthiest way. And so when I gave myself permission to really just feel crappy and be okay with that, it's okay. We beat ourselves up as parents because we don't do it right. And we're oftentimes judging ourselves because we mess up or we don't do it the way we think other parents do it. And our children get mad at us or get frustrated, or maybe we say ugly things to them sometimes, or raise our voice, or we're just unkind. Well, stress happens, right? Stress happens to all of us. And we all have that challenge, and we all have that journey. And I just want to encourage you, get back to the basics. I'm not plugging this book, obviously, because it's out of print, although you can still get some copies. Get back to the basics. It's For All Things a Season. Just get back to the basics. Is for whatever the moment, the child, in that moment, whatever your child is needing, what are they really asking from you in that moment? They're not asking for you to plan their college education. They're not asking for you to give them instructions on how to potty train their children or how to take out the trash when they're in college. They're just demanding of you in that moment. They're demanding of you, they're demanding your connection in that moment. They're demanding your presence in that moment. And getting back to the basics really is as simple as taking a few deep breaths and slowing down and connecting. That's it. Just taking a few deep breaths and slowing down and connecting. And mom says, 27. Yeah, I was 20. Oh, 27. Oh, Garrett says it's 27. Mom said 27. Brr. That's really freaking cold. I'm glad I'm in Oklahoma and it's like 40 here, and still I'm not a cold winter person, but a cold weather person. I prefer the sun. If anyone ever wants to bring Big Papa to Mexico, I will be happy to go with you. So get back to the basics. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't ever overcomplicate it. Everything I talk about, whether it's talking about the brain, whether it's talking about the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, oxytocin, cortisol, or adrenaline, or shock trauma, stress, and anything else, that's all very, very simple stuff. It's just not easy, right? None of that has to be real complicated. It's just about getting back to the basics. And the basics, oftentimes, almost in every situation, take a few deep breaths, calm yourself down, get your thinking clear, get your short-term memory activated, and the solutions will be there. And if the solution's not there for you, just stop. Just be quiet. Be still. You don't have to always be doing something. Sometimes doing nothing is doing everything. Sometimes it's just a matter of chilling. Sometimes it's letting your kid go to their room and slam the freaking door. Heck, if they go to the room and slam the freaking door, leave them in there. Thank goodness they went to their room. Just leave them in there. Don't follow them. And who cares if they slam the door? Let them slam it. It's not the end of the world. Later you can teach them. You can ask them, please close your door softly. All right, so that's it. Get back to the basics, guys. I have got to Big Papa's going. I'm rolling out with Santa this evening. We're going to just go check on a few houses. And so that's really the whole purpose of the hat. So remember, in any given situation, we all have two choices. We can continue to react from our same imprints of stress and fear and overwhelm, and we can react from the past and we can obsess for the future, or we can stop. We can take 3 to 10 deep breaths. We can slow down. We can get present. We can clear our thoughts. We can get focused. We can activate our short-term memory, turn on a little oxytocin. And by doing all those things, you're choosing love. And I hope you choose love. And I hope each and every one of you has a fantastic evening or morning if you're in Australia. And I hope it's a beautiful day for you if you're in Australia. But if it's a night, I hope you lay down. I hope the stress clears your body. The cortisol clears your body. I hope you lay down, and I hope you wake up in the morning refreshed and restored and reinvigorated and ready to make tomorrow just an absolutely amazing day. God bless you. Big Papa loves you. And I may just be checking on you this evening. So turn off your fireplaces in case Santa thinks I need to go down and check out a Christmas tree or something. We'll see you tomorrow.